Imagine arriving at one of the most prestigious events in Hollywood, a night where the brightest stars gather to celebrate power, influence, and achievement, and being stopped dead in your tracks at the entrance. That's exactly what happened at the Variety Power of Women 2025 event, and the woman at the center of this whirlwind is none other than Meghan Markle. But this wasn't just a minor mix-up or an awkward greeting gone wrong. No, this was a confrontation that stunned onlookers, left security scrambling, and sent the media into a frenzy. And it all began with one question. Why was Meghan Markle, a global icon and celebrated figure, denied entry to an event she was expected to headline? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Picture it, the red carpet, sparkling under the glare of thousands of camera flashes, a swirl of reporters, publicists, and fans all vying for a glimpse of the guests. The energy was electric, anticipatory, almost tangible. Everyone was waiting for Meghan, because when she appears, the world watches. The tension was palpable, and yet, amidst the glamour, a storm was quietly brewing. Meghan, poised and impeccably dressed, approached the entrance with her security detail in tow, expecting the smooth, rehearsed passage that high-profile celebrities are accustomed to. But instead, she encountered something entirely unexpected. A blockade of security personnel who refused her passage. The crowd sensed something was off immediately. Cameras pivoted. Whispers rippled across the red carpet. This was not a scene anyone anticipated. On the surface, it might seem absurd. Why would security deny entry to someone of Meghan's stature? But the answer, as insiders reveal, is far more complicated than a simple logistical error. This moment, brief as it may have seemed to the outside world, encapsulated layers of tension, misunderstanding, and perhaps deliberate obstruction. And it set the stage for an evening that would spiral into drama few could have foreseen. To understand the significance, we need to zoom out. Meghan Markle's presence at events like Variety Power of Women is more than just celebrity attendance. It is a statement, a symbol of influence, advocacy, and often controversy. Every appearance she makes is dissected, every gesture analyzed, every interaction scrutinized. She carries with her the weight of the public's expectations, the gaze of the media, and the whispers of those in Hollywood circles who have watched her meteoric rise with equal measures of admiration and skepticism. Denying her entry, even momentarily, was more than a procedural hiccup. It was a disruption of perception, a challenge to her authority, and a test of her composure under pressure. As Meghan approached the security checkpoint, sources report that the tension was nearly tangible. Guards, typically composed and professional, seemed flustered. Protocols appeared suddenly more rigid than one would expect for a high-profile guest. The reasons given were unclear: a miscommunication, a credential issue, or something more subtle, perhaps even deliberate? The crowd watched, curious and anxious. Cameras rolled, capturing each micro-expression, each subtle shift in body language. Meghan's calm, polished exterior hinted at frustration simmering just beneath. Her team whispered urgently, negotiating quietly, their faces masks of concentration and controlled urgency. Meanwhile, the public watched, not knowing the storm brewing behind the curtain. Why does this story matter now? Why should you care about a celebrity's moment at a red carpet event? Because this is about far more than appearances. It is about power, influence, and the invisible rules that govern elite spaces. When someone like Meghan Markle is denied entry, it exposes tensions that exist not just in Hollywood, but in the intersection of media, politics, and celebrity culture. It raises questions. Who decides who belongs? Who is allowed access? And who is blocked? And what does it say about the structures of influence that operate just out of sight? This is a rare glimpse into the machinery that powers fame and the conflicts that inevitably arise when human ambition collides with rigid systems. The incident also has a personal dimension. Meghan Markle has been no stranger to public scrutiny. Her every move is analyzed, criticized, and praised in equal measure. The glare of the spotlight can be dazzling, but it can also be suffocating. Denial of entry, even temporarily, represents not just a logistical hiccup, but an affront to her persona and public image. It challenges the narrative she has worked to cultivate, one of grace, influence, and authority. For someone constantly navigating the delicate balance between privacy and public life, this confrontation was more than a minor inconvenience. It was a test of poise, strategy, and resolve under public pressure. But the story doesn't stop there. The incident was only the opening act in a sequence of events that would unfold throughout the evening. Whispers among attendees suggested conflicting versions of what happened. Some claimed it was an honest mistake, a mix-up that could have happened to anyone. Others hinted at deliberate obstruction, a power play orchestrated behind the scenes by individuals with their own agendas. And then there were those who suggested that the denial was a symptom of larger, unseen tensions, cultural, political, and personal, that have been building for years. The crowd sensed the drama. The cameras captured every second, and social media, as always, began to buzz before the story had even fully developed. So, what exactly happened in those critical moments at the entrance? How did Meghan react when faced with this unexpected barrier? Was there an exchange, calm and measured, or a heated confrontation? Reports vary, and sources remain tight-lipped, adding layers of intrigue to the unfolding narrative. What we do know is that this brief encounter at the door became a pivotal moment, one that would shape perceptions of the evening, influence media coverage, and spark debates among fans, critics, and industry insiders alike. And here's a twist you might not expect. While the public saw a paused entrance, a frozen moment in time, the reality behind the scenes was a complex dance of negotiation, strategy, and rapid decision-making. Security personnel, event planners, and Meghan's team were all engaged in an unspoken battle of influence and authority. Who would yield? Who would stand firm? The stakes were high, and the implications of every action, every word, were magnified by the cameras and by the public's gaze. It is these unseen dynamics, the tension, the strategy, the emotion, that make this story far more than a simple red carpet mishap. And let's not forget the human element. Beyond the glitz, beyond the cameras and headlines, there is a person, Meghan Markle, navigating a situation most of us can only imagine. How does it feel to be publicly challenged, even momentarily, at a moment you expected to shine? What does it take to maintain composure, to think strategically, to turn a potential public humiliation into a statement of resilience? These questions touch on universal themes: dignity under pressure, authority challenged, and the delicate balance between public perception and private reality. But what makes this story truly gripping is what came next. Because being denied entry was only the beginning. The events that unfolded after this initial confrontation would shock attendees, surprise insiders, and create ripples far beyond the walls of the event. There were whispered negotiations, strategic interventions, and unexpected allies that entered the picture. And all of it set the stage for a sequence of moments that no one saw coming. Moments that would redefine the evening, challenge assumptions, and leave a lasting mark on the narrative of Meghan Markle's public life. By now, you're probably asking, what actually triggered the denial? Was it a credential issue, a misunderstanding, or something more intentional? Who in the maze of security and event management held the power to make that call? And most importantly, how did Meghan respond in those critical minutes? These are the questions that will guide the story you are about to hear. A story filled with intrigue, strategy, emotion, and drama, where every detail matters and every action carries weight. But the most shocking part? Even after navigating the tense standoff at the entrance, the evening was far from over. In fact, what came next would completely change the narrative of the event, and no one, not the media, not the attendees, not even Meghan herself, could have predicted how it would unfold. The tension, the drama, the hidden agendas, they were only beginning to surface. And as you stay with this story, piece by piece, you'll discover layers that few people outside the inner circle will ever know, layers that reveal both the human side of celebrity life and the high-stakes world of influence and power that operates just behind the velvet ropes. So, stay close, because what started as a seemingly simple denial of entry is about to become a story of conflict, resilience, and revelation. One that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about Meghan Markle, Hollywood events, and the invisible forces that shape both. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What happens when a celebrity of Meghan Markle's stature approaches an event designed to celebrate women of power, and the world is watching, only to be met with a wall of resistance? Imagine stepping onto a red carpet, flashes popping around you, the murmurs of the crowd rising like a tide, and suddenly being told, you can't come in. It's a scenario that most people would never dream of, yet for Meghan, that was reality on that electrifying evening at the Variety Power of Women 2025 event. But how did it unfold so dramatically? And why did the world feel the tension before anyone even knew the full story? The red carpet stretched before her like a stage set for triumph. Camera crews lined the barricades, lenses trained, fingers poised on triggers. Reporters leaned forward, eager for the soundbite, the quick quote, the photograph that could define the evening. The crowd, a mix of fans and media, buzzed with anticipation. And then came Meghan, composed, elegant, effortlessly commanding attention. Every eye turned. Every camera clicked. It was supposed to be a moment of celebration, a visual affirmation of influence and poise. But that moment was about to crack. From the very first step toward the entrance, subtle cues indicated something was off. The security personnel, normally fluid in their coordination, seemed unusually rigid. Walkie-talkies clicked with more urgency than expected. A guard whispered to another, eyes darting, posture tense. It's almost imperceptible if you're not paying attention, but to those who know the rhythm of red carpet events, it's a signal something is not right. And for Meghan, accustomed to navigating the pressures of public life, it was a jarring start to what should have been a seamless entry. The mini-hook here is almost cinematic. The world sees a glamorous arrival, but behind the scenes, the tension is mounting. For a moment, the cameras capture Meghan's serene smile, but there's a subtle tightening around the eyes, a brief furrow of the brow. Her team flanks her, professional and alert, scanning, negotiating, ready to intervene if needed. The contrast is stark, elegance on the surface, chaos simmering underneath. Have you ever wondered what it's like to maintain composure when every second is under scrutiny? To navigate public expectation and private tension simultaneously? Meghan was living that moment in real time. Observers would later describe the scene as charged and unusually tense for a red carpet. But tension doesn't just exist in the air. It manifests in small gestures, in the body language of those around you. A security guard's hand on a radio, a subtle step back, a whispered command. These are all micro-expressions of anxiety and uncertainty. And in Meghan's case, the tension would soon escalate into confrontation, not through aggression, but through a high-stakes negotiation played out in public view. The subtle dance of authority and protocol was about to be disrupted, and the first signs were already visible. So, what caused this sudden disruption at the door? Was it a simple credentialing issue? A timing miscommunication? Or, as some insiders suggest, a more deliberate challenge designed to test her patience and influence? The public doesn't often see these moments, but in celebrity circles, they are anything but rare. Yet, what made this incident extraordinary wasn't the denial itself. It was how the denial intersected with Meghan's public persona, her network of influence, and the intense media gaze focused on every move. It was a collision of protocol and personality, a dramatic setup that would unfold in unexpected ways. The crowd sensed it before the full story emerged. Whispers rippled across the red carpet. Cameras pivoted instinctively, capturing every slight shift in stance, every fleeting expression. Meghan's team whispered urgently, their faces taut with concentration. What strategies were being employed? Who had the authority to override the barrier? And what did Meghan herself think in those critical moments, when her path forward was unexpectedly blocked? These questions created an instant curiosity gap for those watching, a mystery wrapped in the glitz of Hollywood spectacle. Inside, the event organizers were scrambling. Staff members, alerted to the disruption, moved quickly to assess and respond. Some were nervous, others were visibly frustrated. Imagine the chaos behind a scene that, to the outside world, appears meticulously orchestrated. There's a silent tension between duty and diplomacy, between enforcing rules and respecting prestige. And in this moment, Meghan Markle became both the center of attention and the focal point of a high-stakes negotiation that few would witness in full. The world outside saw flashes and smiles. The world behind the velvet ropes saw urgency, strategic conversations, and subtle power plays that would determine the evening's trajectory. What adds another layer of intrigue is the crowd's reaction. Onlookers sensed the irregularity even if they didn't fully understand it. Some fans whispered, some speculated, some simply gawked. Every observer had their own theory. Maybe it's a credential mix-up, one might say. Or maybe it's intentional, suggested another. And in the era of instant social media, every gesture, every expression, and every hesitation would later be dissected online, dissected in ways that would amplify the drama far beyond the physical red carpet. For Meghan, the stakes were magnified. Every decision, every word, would echo across headlines, across platforms, across global perception. And then came the pivotal moment. A guard stepped forward, visibly signaling that Meghan could not pass. The reason, at first, was vague, a procedural explanation, a formality, yet the denial itself sent shockwaves through the surrounding crowd. Meghan paused, measuring the situation. Her team, trained for crisis, began urgent, quiet negotiation. There were subtle gestures, careful words, brief exchanges that the cameras might not fully capture. But the tension was palpable. In this brief pause, the entire dynamic of the evening shifted. The narrative was no longer just about her arrival. It was about confrontation, authority, and how a public figure responds when challenged in real time. How do you maintain composure when denied something you are expected to have? How do you navigate authority, public scrutiny, and personal pride in a single, high-stakes moment? Meghan faced these questions, and the world was watching, whether it realized it or not. The clash between protocol and celebrity created a scenario filled with emotion, contradiction, and suspense. It's precisely this collision that made the arrival at Variety Power of Women 2025 unforgettable, not just for Meghan, but for everyone who witnessed it, directly or through the lens of media and social commentary. Even as this scene unfolded, whispers of behind-the-scenes maneuvering began to emerge. Some insiders suggested that the denial was not purely procedural, but might have been influenced by rivalries, hidden agendas, or even miscommunications fueled by tension and misunderstanding. Others claimed it was a rare lapse in judgment by the event's security team. Either way, the impact was immediate. Cameras focused, social media buzzed, and Meghan had to decide how to assert herself without escalating the situation publicly. Each second became a microdrama, each exchange a test of patience, strategy, and presence of mind. And yet, the story was only beginning. Because while this confrontation at the entrance dominated attention in the first minutes, what happened next would reveal deeper tensions, unexpected alliances, and a series of decisions that would shape the entire evening. The red carpet was no longer just a ceremonial path to an event. It was a stage for negotiation, influence, and strategy. How Meghan navigated those minutes would be talked about for weeks, dissected in headlines, debated on social media, and analyzed by experts on celebrity culture, public perception, and the politics of prestige. So, what did Meghan do next? How did she maneuver around the sudden obstacle? Which of her allies stepped in, and who remained silent? And most importantly, how did the crowd and the media interpret these moments in real time? The answers to these questions would form the backbone of a night filled with drama, revelation, and power plays. A night where every detail mattered, and every gesture carried weight far beyond what anyone on the red carpet could have imagined. But the most astonishing part of all, what unfolded after this tense standoff at the entrance would completely redefine the narrative of the evening. Alliances shifted, protocols bent, unexpected interventions occurred. And through it all, Meghan Markle navigated the tension with a combination of poise, strategy, and calculated decisiveness that left insiders whispering and spectators stunned. The red carpet had become a stage for drama, power, and influence, and the first act, her blocked entrance, was just the opening move. What came next would escalate the stakes, reveal hidden agendas, and challenge assumptions about celebrity, authority, and resilience in ways no one saw coming. Have you ever wondered what happens behind the scenes when security decides someone, even a celebrity of Meghan Markle's stature, cannot proceed? It's easy to assume that these situations are straightforward. Credentials are checked, passes verified, everyone moves along. But the reality is far more complicated. Security at high-profile events like the Variety Power of Women 2025 operates on a delicate balance of protocol, authority, and influence. And when Meghan Markle arrived that night, something disrupted that balance in a way no one expected. What should have been a routine verification became a tense standoff, raising questions that insiders are still debating. Was it an error, a miscommunication, or something far more deliberate? From the start, the scene at the entrance was electric with uncertainty. Guards, normally professional and composed, seemed unusually tense. Walkie-talkies buzzed incessantly. Orders were exchanged in whispers, quick and urgent. Observers reported a flurry of motion, one guard pointing toward a side entrance, another speaking with what appeared to be event coordinators in hushed tones. Meghan, flanked by her security detail, was met not with a smooth passage but with hesitation, confusion, and the unmistakable tension of authority being questioned. The stakes were high, and the crowd, even if they didn't understand the intricacies of security protocol, felt it. So, what really governs access at events like these? Typically, there are layers of security: credential verification, guest lists, VIP clearance, and personal vetting. Each layer is designed to protect both the guests and the prestige of the event. On paper, it's a well-oiled machine. In practice, however, it's prone to human error, judgment calls, and occasionally, personal bias. For Meghan, the denial of entry at the gate wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a public confrontation of that delicate system. Each guard involved had to weigh authority against the potential fallout of denying a high-profile figure. And that calculation is never simple. Now, consider the human factor. Security teams, while professional, are made up of individuals who respond to pressure differently. Some rely strictly on protocol, adhering to rules with unwavering precision. Others may interpret guidelines more flexibly, influenced by context, prior experiences, or even subtle social cues. When these personalities collide at a high-pressure moment, especially when the VIP involved is someone as globally scrutinized as Meghan Markle, the potential for conflict skyrockets. Was the hesitation she faced a simple procedural decision, or was it influenced by personal judgment, miscommunication, or even underlying tension? That question has fueled speculation among insiders ever since. Multiple witnesses described the standoff in terms that sound almost cinematic. One staff member recalled the way Meghan's team leaned in, speaking quietly yet firmly, their voices measured but unmistakably insistent. Another noted the sharpness in Meghan's own movements, the subtle adjustments in posture, the controlled yet unmistakable tension in her expression. Every word exchanged, every gesture made, was magnified by cameras and the audience surrounding the red carpet. In moments like these, small differences in tone or movement can become indicators of power dynamics, influence, and negotiation. And in Meghan's case, every second counted. Some insiders suggest that the denial may have been influenced by internal friction within the event organization itself. Rumors of rivalries, professional disagreements, and unspoken hierarchies circulated among staff before, during, and after the event. While the official explanation cited credential verification, several sources hinted at a more nuanced reality. Could it have been a deliberate test of authority? A momentary assertion of power by someone within the security team? Or perhaps a miscommunication amplified by layers of tension and ego? These are the kinds of questions that shape the narrative far beyond the red carpet itself. And here's where it gets even more complex. Meghan Markle is no ordinary guest. She carries influence, both symbolic and practical. Her presence at events is a statement. Her arrival can shift media narratives, create waves in social commentary, and even unsettle individuals who feel their authority challenged. When someone of that stature is denied entry, even temporarily, the implications go beyond mere logistics. It's not just about access. It's about control, perception, and negotiation of power in real time. The guards, coordinators, and staff were not only managing a procedural requirement, they were navigating a high-stakes human drama. Observers who watched the incident unfold noted a fascinating interplay between tension and diplomacy. Meghan didn't storm the entrance or publicly challenge the security guards with anger. Instead, she maintained a composed exterior, her team working strategically, voices low but commanding. The situation became a quiet battle of influence. Who could assert authority most effectively without creating a public spectacle? For Meghan, this was both a challenge and an opportunity to demonstrate composure, intelligence, and negotiation skill under intense scrutiny. But let's pause and ask, What motivates a security team in a situation like this? Beyond protocol, security personnel are acutely aware of the consequences of misjudgment. Deny access incorrectly, and you risk public outrage, media scrutiny, or reputational damage for the event. Allow access incorrectly, and you risk safety, security breaches, or internal disciplinary action. These are real stakes, and they create pressure that can magnify the impact of every word, gesture, and decision. When you combine that with the presence of a global figure like Meghan Markle, the pressure multiplies exponentially. And then there's the psychology of gatekeeping. Some insiders argue that moments like these can sometimes become subtle power plays. In high-profile environments, the ability to control access, who enters, who is noticed, who is allowed passage, carries symbolic weight. Was this denial simply protocol, or was it also a demonstration of authority? The line between procedure and personal assertion can be thin, especially when reputations, relationships, and public perception are all on the line. For Meghan Markle, navigating that line required poise, awareness, and strategic action, all under the gaze of a world watching in real time. Interestingly, the crowd's reaction added an additional layer of pressure. Fans and onlookers sensed something was happening before the details were clear. Cameras swiveled, whispers spread, and speculation mounted. Social media, as always, became an immediate amplifier, with live updates, tweets, and posts speculating on what was happening. Some observers assumed it was a minor mishap, others suggested intrigue behind the scenes. The rapid proliferation of narratives created an unpredictable environment, one that required careful maneuvering, clear thinking, and a level of emotional control that few could maintain in the spotlight. Meanwhile, Meghan's own approach to the situation displayed a nuanced understanding of public perception. She didn't escalate with anger. She didn't retreat in frustration. Instead, she remained measured, leveraging both her personal influence and the professionalism of her team. It was a subtle assertion of authority, not through confrontation, but through presence, composure, and strategic communication. This is the kind of behavior that insiders note as emblematic of her approach to high-pressure, public-facing scenarios, and it would prove essential as the evening unfolded. But the standoff at the entrance was only the beginning. While the immediate issues seemed to revolve around credentials and protocol, the situation hinted at deeper questions of influence, hierarchy, and human decision-making. Who ultimately had the power to authorize entry? Who decided, consciously or unconsciously, that Meghan should be paused? And how did that decision ripple through the rest of the event, affecting staff, attendees, and media coverage? These questions would remain unresolved for the first part of the evening, adding tension and suspense to every subsequent moment. And here's the twist. While security was the most visible obstacle, the real drama was unfolding in layers behind the scene. Event coordinators whispered into phones, negotiating quietly. VIP liaisons debated, weighing rules against reputation. Meghan's team subtly maneuvered, calibrating responses and assessing reactions. In this environment, every second mattered. Every subtle adjustment could alter the trajectory of the evening. And in the end, what seemed like a simple denial of entry was, in fact, a test of influence, patience, and strategy, a moment that would reverberate far beyond the red carpet. So what came next? Who ultimately stepped in to resolve the standoff? How did Meghan and her team navigate the labyrinth of protocol, authority, and expectation to finally move forward? And what unseen forces were at play behind the velvet ropes that the public would never fully see? These are the questions that set the stage for the rest of the evening. Questions that would unravel into a story of negotiation, tension, and revelation, where every decision carried weight and every glance held meaning. And just as the red carpet seemed to hold its breath, the next move was made, a move that would escalate the situation, challenge assumptions, and leave insiders whispering about what they had just witnessed. The door was no longer simply a passage. It had become a stage for drama, strategy, and influence. And Meghan Markle was at its center, poised to navigate the storm with precision. What happened in those next moments would not only determine her access to the event, but would also expose the intricate dance of power, authority, and human decision-making that governs spaces most of us take for granted. The question remained, was this purely a procedural hiccup, Or was there something more calculated behind the denial? And as the evening unfolded, the truth would start to reveal itself in unexpected and often shocking ways. What does it really mean to walk into a room and have the world's attention fixated on you? For Meghan Markle, influence isn't just about fame. It's a currency, a force that shapes perceptions, opens doors, and sometimes challenges authority. When she arrived at the Variety Power of Women 2025 event, she wasn't just another guest walking the red carpet. She was a living statement of power, visibility, and controversy. But how does influence intersect with protocol, security, and the backstage dynamics of high-profile events? And why did her presence provoke not just awe, but tension? These are questions few outside Hollywood fully understand. And the answers reveal a world where authority, reputation, and perception collide in dramatic ways. The concept of influence is tricky. It's invisible, yet undeniable. You can't see it, touch it, or measure it like a credential or a VIP pass, but it shapes behavior, dictates access, and often decides outcomes in ways that are subtle yet profound. Meghan Markle carries influence on multiple levels: globally recognizable, politically astute, socially engaged. She has a following that spans continents, media networks that track her every move, and an aura that commands attention without demanding it. And when such influence intersects with structured environments, like a prestigious event with strict protocols, the collision can be messy, charged, and, as we saw that night, dramatic. From the moment Meghan approached the venue, the energy shifted. Her walk wasn't just a physical approach, it was a signal. Cameras turned, flashes popped, whispers rippled across the crowd. But the real power lay in her team's orchestration. Every movement, every subtle cue, every glance communicated authority, composure, and expectation. Security personnel, accustomed to managing high-profile guests, were suddenly negotiating more than just access. They were navigating influence in real time. And in that tension, power dynamics became visible to anyone watching closely. Consider the psychological impact of influence in this context. Meghan's presence carried weight, but that weight can be interpreted differently by different people. For event organizers, it signals prestige and media attention, but also pressure and potential scrutiny. For security, it's a test of judgment, how to enforce rules without provoking backlash. For other attendees, it can generate admiration, envy, or strategic alignment. In short, influence creates ripple effects that extend far beyond the individual. And that night, those ripples collided with the rigid structure of protocols in ways no one anticipated. There's also the element of perception. Influence is partly objective: followers, media coverage, past achievements, but largely subjective, depending on who is assessing it and how. For some, Meghan represents progressive advocacy, a champion of causes, a model of resilience. For others, she's a disruptor, someone whose presence challenges traditional hierarchies and expectations. That duality heightens tension in environments designed to celebrate power while maintaining strict control. Influence can open doors, but it can also provoke hesitation, resistance, and even subtle forms of obstruction. It's also worth noting that influence is performative. It's not just what you have, it's how you wield it. Meghan's approach to the Variety Power of Women 2025 event was calculated, measured, and deliberately poised. She understood the stakes and the optics. Her demeanor communicated calm authority, while her team subtly managed interactions to maintain control. This kind of strategic presence is a hallmark of individuals who understand the currency of influence, not only in terms of access, but also in shaping narratives, managing perception, and asserting authority without confrontation. But influence isn't just about personal presence. It extends to networks, alliances, and relationships. Meghan's arrival didn't just impact security. It reverberated through the event's social ecosystem. Who was watching her approach? Who felt challenged, inspired, or threatened by her presence? Who would subtly align themselves with her? And who would resist, whether consciously or unconsciously? These are the hidden dynamics of high-profile events, movements invisible to the casual observer, but critical in understanding how power is exercised, negotiated, and sometimes contested. Interestingly, insiders noted subtle signs of these dynamics even before the standoff at the entrance. Event coordinators exchanged tense glances, Security personnel whispered into radios, their body language betraying uncertainty. Some VIP attendees appeared to shift in their positions, their expressions flickering with curiosity or unease. All these subtle reactions indicate one thing. Influence is not simply about being present. It's about altering the behavior and decision-making of those around you. And in Meghan's case, the effect was immediate, tangible, and, in some ways, disruptive. Now, consider the broader implications. Influence can be empowering, but it can also make individuals vulnerable. High visibility attracts both admiration and scrutiny. When Meghan's entry was challenged, it wasn't merely a procedural issue. It was a test of how influence interacts with established systems of power. Could she assert herself without creating conflict? Could she navigate authority figures whose roles were defined by protocol, not persuasion? The answers would unfold over the course of the evening, and the stakes were higher than anyone outside the inner circle could fully appreciate. There's also a lesson in perception versus reality. From the crowd's perspective, Meghan was momentarily denied access, an image ripe for speculation and sensationalism. Behind the scenes, however, the situation was far more complex. Negotiations, strategic assessments, and subtle displays of authority were all at play. Influence operates in this gray area, shaping outcomes indirectly, often in ways invisible to those observing superficially. And Meghan's ability to navigate these nuances under pressure would define much of the narrative for that night, both in public and in the private corridors behind the event's facade. Furthermore, the interplay of influence and expectation adds a layer of tension. When someone carries influence, expectations multiply. People anticipate certain behaviors, gestures, and outcomes. Any deviation, intentional or accidental, is magnified. For Meghan, the denial of entry wasn't just a logistical hiccup. It was a challenge to her ability to assert influence gracefully under observation. Every second she spent at the entrance became a microcosm of larger societal narratives. Celebrity versus protocol, individuality versus institutional authority, visibility versus control. And the stakes weren't hypothetical. They were immediate, real, and highly public. What's particularly striking is how influence intersects with diplomacy. Meghan had to manage not just the barrier at the gate, but the perception of the interaction itself. How it appeared to the crowd, the media, and event insiders was as important as resolving the immediate access issue. Influence is a double-edged sword. It can facilitate smoother navigation, but it also amplifies scrutiny. Every move is read, interpreted, and often misinterpreted. For someone like Meghan, the challenge is not only to assert presence, but to do so in a way that maintains credibility, authority, and public perception simultaneously. And yet, influence is not absolute. It operates within contexts, and even the most influential figures encounter boundaries. The standoff at the entrance illustrates a fundamental truth. Power is relational, not absolute. Meghan could exert authority, but she had to do so in a system that had its own rules, hierarchies, and decision-makers. Negotiation, strategy, and composure became tools of influence, ways to assert authority without overt confrontation. And it's in these moments, when visibility and protocol collide, that the true test of influence becomes apparent. But influence also carries responsibility. The world watches not just what is done, but how it is done. Meghan's handling of the standoff, poised yet assertive, became a lesson in exercising influence responsibly, without aggression, without public spectacle, but with undeniable presence. It's a subtle skill, one that balances power, perception, and negotiation simultaneously. And in the high-stakes environment of the Variety Power of Women 2025 event, those skills were not just advantageous, they were essential. And as the night progressed, it became clear that Meghan's influence extended beyond the immediate barrier. Behind the scenes, her arrival reshaped conversations, alliances, and even the behavior of those who initially resisted her. Authority figures adjusted their approach, event staff recalibrated, and observers inside and outside the venue were forced to reconsider assumptions about power, negotiation, and celebrity presence. Influence, it turned out, is not a static quality. It's a dynamic force that operates in layers, ripple effects, and interactions that unfold over time. So, As the evening unfolded and the standoff at the entrance became a memory, the question remained: how would Meghan's influence shape the rest of the event? Would it facilitate smoother interactions, or would latent tensions escalate further? How did her presence recalibrate the behavior of organizers, attendees, and security personnel alike? And what unseen forces, operating behind the scenes, would continue to test her authority, strategy, and composure throughout the night? The answer, as it would soon become clear, was that influence is never simple, predictable, or static. It is a force that shapes outcomes in visible and invisible ways, interacts with systems of authority, and challenges assumptions at every turn. And for Meghan Markle, the Power of Women 2025 event became not just a celebration of achievement, but a live demonstration of how influence, when wielded strategically, can transform not only perception but reality itself. But just as the dynamics seemed to settle, another layer of complexity emerged, one that would challenge Meghan's influence in ways no one expected. Behind the controlled facade of the red carpet, tensions simmered, alliances shifted, and subtle forces prepared to intervene. And what happened next would reveal just how fragile, yet potent, influence can be when it collides with protocol, ego, and hidden agendas. Have you ever wondered what the people who actually see these high-profile moments unfold really think? The photographers, the event staff, the insiders, and even other celebrities who happen to be nearby, they all witness details that the public never sees. Their perspectives often reveal layers of tension, emotion, and context that transform a simple headline into a complex narrative. At the Variety Power of Women 2025 event, these witnesses had stories to tell, and what they revealed about Meghan Markle's denied entry was both illuminating and shocking. From the very beginning, observers noticed that something was off. The usual choreography of the red carpet, guests arriving, cameras flashing, security guiding people seamlessly, was disrupted. One photographer, who requested anonymity, recalled the moment Meghan reached the entrance. "I've covered hundreds of events like this, and I've never seen a pause like that. It wasn't just a delay. It was tense. There was a brief standoff, subtle but undeniable. You could feel it in the air." This tension wasn't visible in the official media coverage. It was subtle, almost invisible to those who weren't looking closely. But for insiders, it was a clear signal that something extraordinary was happening. Other staff members provided accounts that painted a picture of behind-the-scenes negotiation. Event coordinators whispered urgently into earpieces. Security personnel huddled for brief consultations. The murmurs and gestures suggested confusion, but also the high stakes of controlling the situation without escalating it publicly. Witnesses described Meghan as calm, yet commanding, navigating the obstacle with a quiet authority that seemed to recalibrate everyone around her. One insider noted, "She didn't raise her voice or make a scene, but you could tell she wasn't going to be brushed aside. That kind of presence changes how people behave." Then there were the other celebrities in attendance. Several high-profile guests later recounted feeling a mix of surprise and curiosity as they watched Meghan's interaction with security. Some whispered to each other, speculating about the cause of the pause. Others observed quietly, noting the subtle tension in the air. According to one attendee, "It was surreal. We were all expecting a smooth arrival, red carpet, photos, and glam. Instead, we got this charged moment. You could feel the dynamics shifting." This insight is crucial because it highlights how Meghan's presence didn't just affect security. It rippled through the entire environment, influencing behavior, perception, and energy across the event. Witnesses also pointed out the emotional layers at play. One staff member commented on the delicate balance that Meghan maintained. "She was frustrated, obviously, but you'd never know it if you just looked at her. Her posture, her tone, the way she interacted with her team, it was all controlled. But if you watched closely, you could see the tension simmering. It was electric." This observation underscores a key theme. In high-stakes events, emotional intelligence and composure are as powerful as influence and credentials. Meghan's ability to manage both her emotions and her public image simultaneously became a defining factor in how the night unfolded. Security personnel, of course, had their own perspectives. Some described the denial as procedural, citing credential verification and standard protocol. Others hinted at the pressure of dealing with a high-profile guest whose influence could shift the outcome of the situation. One guard, speaking on condition of anonymity, said, "It's not every day you stop someone like Meghan Markle. You know the stakes. Every word, every gesture is amplified. It's not just protocol, it's diplomacy. You have to manage both at the same time." Their accounts highlight the dual pressures facing security teams at events of this caliber, enforcing rules while navigating influence and expectation. Interestingly, some witnesses suggested that the denial was influenced by internal politics among the event staff. Conflicting accounts emerged about whether the pause was a simple miscommunication or a deliberate assertion of authority by someone within the organization. Some insiders hinted at subtle rivalries or personal agendas that may have contributed to the standoff. One coordinator commented, "It wasn't just about the credentials. There were other dynamics at play, unspoken power moves, if you will." Meghan's presence brought all of that to the surface. These revelations add complexity to the narrative, suggesting that the denial was not simply an isolated procedural incident, but a moment where multiple layers of influence, protocol, and personal decision-making collided. The public rarely sees these backstage dynamics, yet they are critical to understanding the full picture. Witnesses described how small details, a shift in posture, a whispered instruction, a subtle hand gesture, signaled underlying tensions. Photographers captured expressions, not always visible in still images, that hinted at surprise, hesitation, and recalibration. Staff moved with urgency, balancing protocol against the immediate need to manage perception. Even minor decisions, like whether to direct Meghan to a side entrance or pause for verification, carried enormous symbolic weight. Every choice became a microdrama with real consequences for perception, reputation, and narrative control. Some witnesses also noted the ripple effects on other attendees. As the standoff unfolded, whispers spread among VIP guests, some of whom watched quietly, while others speculated openly. One insider reported, "It was fascinating to see how people adjusted. Some seemed to support her silently. Others looked nervous, like they were watching a test of authority." Meghan's presence changed the dynamics instantly. These accounts reinforce a key insight. Influence isn't static. It moves through an environment, shaping behavior, recalibrating interactions, and altering the balance of power in ways that are subtle but consequential. And then there were the unexpected details that only eyewitnesses could provide. For instance, several photographers described Meghan's subtle gestures to her team, slight nods, controlled eye contact, and poised movement, that signaled readiness without aggression. Event staff noted how she navigated physical obstacles gracefully, turning potential confrontation into a display of composure and strategic presence. Even the most minor actions, according to insiders, were magnified by the optics of the moment, reinforcing her influence and control over a chaotic situation. Witnesses also revealed an interesting psychological dynamic. The way Meghan's presence seemed to pressure not only security, but also event organizers and coordinators. The moment she paused, the surrounding staff recalibrated their decisions. Protocol was interpreted more flexibly. Decisions that might have been rigid in her absence became negotiable. This is influence in action, subtle, relational, and profoundly effective, demonstrating that authority is often less about formal power and more about the ability to shape the perceptions and decisions of others. And yet, despite the careful management of the situation, tension remained palpable. Witnesses reported that Meghan's team was simultaneously negotiating, reassuring, and observing, maintaining a balance between assertiveness and diplomacy. Security personnel, for their part, had to assess every move carefully, mindful of the potential repercussions of either allowing entry too quickly or enforcing rules too rigidly. These overlapping pressures created a scenario of high-stakes tension, where every gesture, word, and decision carried amplified significance. Perhaps the most fascinating testimony came from other attendees who observed Meghan's poise under pressure. One insider said, "She didn't just handle the situation, she transformed it. By remaining calm and composed, she made everyone else rethink their approach. You could see the shift in energy. It was subtle but undeniable. People who were initially hesitant or rigid suddenly adjusted their stance." This insight underscores a critical theme. Influence is relational, strategic, and performative. It's as much about shaping the environment as it is about individual action. Finally, witnesses revealed the most surprising element. The standoff, while tense, also revealed unexpected allies. Certain staff members and coordinators, perhaps inspired by Meghan's demeanor or swayed by her influence, stepped in subtly to facilitate resolution. Their interventions were quiet, almost invisible, yet pivotal in navigating the situation. This interplay of resistance and support highlights a deeper narrative. In moments of public scrutiny, influence, composure, and strategic presence can turn potential conflict into a demonstration of authority and resilience. But as the witnesses' accounts make clear, the story didn't end at the entrance. While the standoff had been resolved for the cameras, subtle ripples of tension and negotiation continued to shape the rest of the evening. The interplay between influence, protocol, and human decision-making would resurface repeatedly, revealing layers of drama, strategy, and hidden agendas that no one outside the inner circle could fully anticipate. And what happened next would not only test Meghan's influence further, but would also expose the complex web of relationships, authority, and perception that governs high-profile events like this. The question that remained, according to these witnesses, was, how would Meghan leverage her influence beyond this moment? How would she navigate ongoing tension, subtle rivalries, and the scrutiny of both staff and other attendees? And, perhaps most intriguingly, who among the witnesses would emerge as unexpected allies or obstacles as the evening unfolded? The answers, as insiders hinted, would reveal not just the mechanics of a red carpet event, but the intricate interplay of power, perception, and strategy that defines the life of a global public figure. The moment had arrived. The red carpet, once a seamless stage of glamour and media attention, had become the epicenter of a high-stakes confrontation. Meghan Markle stood before the entrance, calm, poised, and unshaken, while the security personnel faced the impossible task of enforcing protocol without igniting a public spectacle. It was a clash of worlds, the rigid authority of security versus the undeniable presence of a global celebrity. And for everyone watching, photographers, insiders, and attendees, the tension was palpable, electric, and, in some ways, unforgettable. What makes this confrontation so compelling isn't simply that entry was denied. It's the way human dynamics collided under intense public scrutiny. On one side, you have security, bound by rules, trained to anticipate risk, and responsible for maintaining order. On the other side, you have Meghan, a figure whose influence alone can shift narratives, reshape behavior, and command attention. In that moment, protocol wasn't just a guideline. It was a test of authority, strategy, and composure. And as the cameras rolled, every subtle gesture, every whispered exchange, every second of hesitation became magnified, recorded, and eventually analyzed across social media and news outlets. The first sparks of confrontation were subtle. A guard stepped forward, hand slightly raised, signaling that entry could not proceed. Meghan paused, eyes steady, her posture calm but unmistakably assertive. Her team immediately engaged, speaking in measured tones, ensuring that instructions were clear while signaling the urgency of the situation. The crowd, sensing the tension, quieted momentarily. Flashes from cameras punctuated the silence, capturing micro-expressions that would later become a focal point of commentary. For anyone who has ever witnessed influence and authority clash, this was a textbook example, a moment where strategy, presence, and stakes converged in real time. What made the confrontation uniquely dramatic was the contrast between Meghan's composure and the visible unease of security personnel. Insiders later described it as a psychological standoff, where neither side moved aggressively, yet the tension was almost tangible. Every slight gesture, an adjustment of posture, a fleeting glance, a whisper into a walkie-talkie, carried layers of meaning. To the casual observer, it may have appeared minor, but anyone attuned to human dynamics would recognize the delicate negotiation unfolding. Meghan's influence was not overtly coercive. It was subtle, calculated, and effective, and in that subtlety lay the power to transform a potentially contentious moment into a display of strategic authority. One security insider described the difficulty of the situation. You're trained to enforce rules, but this isn't just any guest. Every word and move is under scrutiny. You have to balance protocol with perception. One misstep, and it's a headline that could spiral. This insight reveals the dual pressure facing those on the front lines. They weren't merely enforcing access. They were performing it under an unrelenting spotlight. And Meghan, aware of both her public image and the optics of the moment, navigated this terrain with remarkable skill, blending assertiveness with diplomacy. Then came the subtle escalation. A second guard, perhaps sensing the first hesitation or influenced by internal discussions among event staff, stepped forward, reinforcing the denial. The tone was calm, professional, but firm. Meghan, momentarily still, scanned the situation, gauged the responses, and adjusted her approach. She didn't confront with aggression. Instead, she used composure as leverage, signaling that she was both aware of the rules and unwilling to be sidelined. It's a tactic insiders call strategic presence, asserting influence through demeanor and timing rather than verbal confrontation. And in a scenario like this, it can be far more powerful than shouting, demanding, or visibly challenging authority. But what about the human element? Security personnel are individuals, each with their own interpretation of protocol, judgment, and risk assessment. Some may have felt that enforcing the denial strictly was necessary, while others may have been swayed by Meghan's presence or the reaction of onlookers. The psychological pressure in these moments is immense. Every decision is second-guessed, every gesture is scrutinized, and the stakes are amplified by the knowledge that the world is watching. Meghan's ability to maintain control while navigating this environment highlights not only her personal composure, but her understanding of influence as a relational and situational force. At one point, according to insiders, there was a brief verbal exchange, quiet, contained, yet loaded with tension. The words themselves were measured, almost mundane: verification, credentials, protocol. But the subtext was clear. On one side, authority. On the other, influence. Neither could yield without potential repercussions. And in that charged silence, the true drama of the evening unfolded. Cameras captured fleeting expressions, reporters whispered into microphones, and the crowd, sensing something significant, held its collective breath. This was no ordinary arrival. It was a live demonstration of negotiation under pressure, with every participant acutely aware of the stakes. Observers also noted the subtle interplay between Meghan's team and security personnel. Her aides weren't just passive bystanders. They actively facilitated communication, clarified misunderstandings, and reinforced Meghan's composure while subtly advocating for resolution. This coordination was crucial. It demonstrated that influence is rarely solitary. It often requires strategic alignment with allies who understand both the rules and the relational dynamics at play. The standoff, therefore, became not just a confrontation between Meghan and security, but a multifaceted negotiation involving multiple actors, each interpreting and responding to the situation in real time. And then came the tipping point. Sources describe a moment when the balance shifted, not through force, but through perception. Meghan's steady demeanor, combined with the quiet but assertive negotiation of her team, caused a recalibration among security personnel. The initial rigidity softened, conversations became more flexible, and pathways previously closed began to open. It was subtle, almost invisible, but the impact was profound. Influence, as insiders often remark, operates most effectively when it is understated yet undeniable, capable of reshaping behavior without overt confrontation. And in this instance, Meghan had demonstrated that principle to perfection. But the confrontation didn't end neatly. While entry was eventually granted, the tension lingered, rippling through the event's staff, attendees, and media. The standoff at the entrance became a story in itself. A moment that would dominate social media discussions, inspire commentary, and fuel speculation for days afterward. And it revealed deeper truths about the dynamics of celebrity, authority, and public perception, that even in environments governed by strict protocol, influence, composure, and strategic presence can alter outcomes in ways that are both subtle and decisive. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this confrontation was the emotional intelligence displayed. Meghan managed frustration, anticipation, and public scrutiny simultaneously, projecting confidence without aggression, patience without passivity, and authority without overt confrontation. Witnesses described it as a masterclass in negotiation under pressure, a display of strategic awareness that extended far beyond the immediate issue of entry. And for those watching closely, it became clear that this moment would define much of the narrative surrounding her appearance that evening. So what happened next? How did the resolution of the entrance confrontation influence the unfolding of the rest of the night? Which dynamics persisted, which tensions dissipated, and what subtle power plays emerged once Meghan was finally inside the venue? And perhaps most importantly, how did the world outside, watching through cameras and social media, interpret a moment that was far more complex than it appeared? The answers to these questions would reveal not only the mechanics of influence and authority, but also the intricate dance of perception, power, and strategy that shapes high-profile events. The confrontation at the entrance was just the beginning. It set the stage for unexpected challenges, subtle rivalries, and strategic maneuvers that would continue to unfold throughout the evening. And as the night progressed, one thing became clear. In a world where visibility and influence collide with protocol and authority, every gesture matters, every decision carries weight, and every second has the potential to shift the narrative in ways no one anticipates.